Walks in. All right, so you guys were both here last week. You were not here
I
last week.
wasn't.
Yeah, so I know Nadir knows what this is. So in Hebrews, in chapter 11, it says, by faith we blank that the worlds were created by God. So, not no, right? You know, don't say it yet. But take another guess. By faith we blank that the worlds were created by God, that He created all things out of nothing. Nadir, since you got it last week, we understand. So when we have faith in God, once we have faith, it says in verse 6 of the same chapter, there's things we could understand that we never could have understood before. So that's the word noeho. So what we learned from last week is that our noeho, our ability to understand, is actually crippled by sin. It's called the noetic effect of sin. You should Google noetic effect of sin. I may post Van Til's essay on the noetic effect of sin and what it means to us as human beings as we go through our life. So there's lots of things that we can now understand once we have faith, but there's certain things that we can never understand, never comprehend. So in this section, it's chapter 2, it's not 11, of God and the Holy Trinity. We're not even going to get into the third section because it just tells you what the Holy Trinity is. We just a little review from last week. So it tells you what the Holy Trinity is, but it's just something that can't be explained. When I would teach this section in the high school classes, I would go through everything I could teach them from the Westminster Confession on the Holy Trinity, and then I would say, okay, who now understands the Holy Trinity? I always get some suckers to raise their hands. Oh, I'm going to have to teach it all over again because the whole point is that you can't understand it. It's incomprehensible. So that kept them entertained. Okay, so when we profess our faith every week at our church, we say, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. And those words just roll off our tongue. We all have them memorized. If they ever change them, we've messed them up every time. But what is it that you're actually saying you actually believe when you say that? Have you ever considered, okay, I'm confessing this. Yes, I do believe it's true. Do I understand it? No, I believe it's true. But here's what I want you all to do. You got to stop writing for a second. Look at your finger. Just put your finger in front of your face and look. Now I want you to concentrate. Look at your finger, and with the knowledge that there's 7 billion atoms in your body. That's 7 followed by 27 zeros. Now in your mind's eye, what I want you to do is focus on the tip of your finger. Focus on a cell on the tip of your finger at the end of it. And picture a carbon atom that's right there on the tip of your finger. Okay, can you see it in your mind's eye? Okay, take a deep breath. How did it get there? Where's it from? How did it get there?
Lindsay nailed it.
God.
Actually, of course, it did. Everything got here from God. But how did it get there on your finger? It's really there. If we were able to zoom in with a microscope, we would see that carbon atom on the tip of our finger. How did it get there? How old is that atom? How old is it? It's right there on your tip of your finger. It exists. It's really, really there.
Is it as old as we are?
Is it as old as you are?
I don't know. Depends on if it's a new skin cell or not.
Okay, well.
Should it multiply from?
Well, we're going to answer all these questions, but you could keep throwing out your guesses. When did that atom come into existence? That's now on the tip of your finger. You never thought about these things, right? That's why you have a teacher that thinks about silly things like this, so you could try to get an idea of what you're saying when you say, I believe in God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. Okay, how did it get there? I used to answer this question by saying it was either in your father's sperm or your mother's egg. And when that joined, it ended up working its way through your body, and now you're all in your 20s, and now it ended up on your finger. But guess what? Every atom in your body, 98% are recycled every year. So this atom will not be there next year, especially if it's on the outside of your finger.
Yeah,
That atom's gone.
that's gone.
Where'd it go? How old is the atom? There, it just came off my finger, going somewhere else. How old is it? Not as old as you, because it's left your body. It's only been there a year. Crazy to think about these things, right? How old is it? Take a guess.
Well, isn't it as old as the earth as existence? Because the atoms started there, and then it came. We were made out of dirt, but the atoms were in the dirt first. They don't really go anywhere. They just transfer. Like there's hydrogen in the
Are you
air.
reading from my notes?
No, I'm a chemistry teacher. So
Oh, great. So that's
I
good
kind of
to.
get the atom thing sometimes. He
Yeah,
talks
well-
and I
Yeah, you need to destroy to come and be transferred.
No, and there's a book on. There's a baby genius book about atoms. I read it to the boys, and like, it's not destroyed. Like, you don't destroy the atom. It's like nuclear physics. If you
It can become
destroy it.
energy.
Yeah.
You're right. See, we're getting into real
Yeah,
stuff.
they
So
don't go
when
anywhere. They just move electrons.
this used to be 5 classes, just so you know. So I'm trying to crunch it into one class. But again, a lot of what.
Technically, it's as old as existence.
Okay, so when did it come into existence? I'm going to quote some Bible verses. I'm not going to make you read them because I want to get through all of this, and then we could have time for questions and stuff and more banter. But in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Earth in the beginning.
Genesis
1-1.
1:1. In the beginning was the Word. Now I want you to listen to this verse that most of us have memorized. And the Word was God, and the Word was I mistranslated. And the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Now, if you're reading the notes I put up, I put a quote from Calvin. This is God lisping to us in baby language to say things we could not possibly understand or comprehend. Now we're going to have some Latin. Anybody know what ex nihilo nihil fit means? Ex nihilo nihil fit.
Nothing.
You got the nothing. Nihilo, nihilistic. Very good. Okay, ex out of nothing, nothing comes.
Right.
Out of nothing, nothing comes. So if there was ever a time when there was nothing, what would there be now?
Nothing.
Right. That's what it means. For there to be something now, there must have been something that existed forever. There has to be. Could be me. Could be this pen. But unlikely. We could easily prove. These are, as you evaluate the potential of what could be that thing that existed forever, if you really get into studying it, the only candidate is the God of the Bible. He's the only entity that existed forever, out of which everything comes. So now we have the other Latin term, ex nihilo nihil fit.
Sorry?
Ex nihilo nihil fit.
I forgot my last name.
Forgot your Latin? Do you know? Out of nothing, nothing comes. So that's where we are right now. So, let's see. Here's the other Latin word. Ex Deo omnia sun. Ex Deo, I was going to write them down, but we'll write, it'll be in the notes.
Father, out of.
All things are from God. So when we say all things, what are all things made up of? We just talked about them. Atoms. So all things that come from God include every single atom that exists. There's 7 times 7 billion, followed by 20 zeros, atoms in our body. And we focused on one little atom on our finger and how it got there. Now, did you ever think about where your atom goes after it goes, or where it came from before? Of course, you never thought of those things. But all of the atoms were here when? When did they get here? I'm sorry?
In the beginning.
In the beginning, God created all the atoms. And, as we said last week, when he created things from those atoms, he was creating a tree in the garden that had fruit on it. It says right there in Genesis, there was the fruit tree and there was the fruit. More importantly, he created Adam. Let's just talk about Adam for now. He created Adam. Think about it. Adam didn't exist, and now he does exist. 7 billion atoms that God, like Lego bricks, put together in the proper sequence, exactly where they needed to be. And because atoms do, and molecules do, and DNA does what it does, Adam was an existing human being that was able to be fruitful and multiply. Puberty, all of those things didn't happen to Adam. They just were what would have happened to Adam if he was born and grew to be the age of, anybody want to guess?
Oh, he has an age?
Well, fruitful and multiply, so how old would he have to be to have sex?
15, 14, 12.
At least, but he'd probably a little older than that. He had to tend the garden. But whatever, let's say he was 20, okay? Nice round number. So when Adam was one day old, he was 20 plus 1. The next day was 20 plus 2. The next day was 20 plus 3. But in his body, for his body to function, here's another statistics chemist that maybe, I don't know if you did biology and chemistry. Do you know that 90% of the cells of the things that are in your body are not part of your body? 90%, only 10% is left. That includes gazillions of bacteria, all kinds of things that just are in the biosystem of your body that exist. There's also, your body can't exist. What's happening right now with Lindsay? Her nutrients
Are being sucked away.
are being sucked away, and it's, go feed her a little more. She's feeding for 2. That's true, because this is all those atoms that she's eating. Because again, the only way this atom got here, we're talking about an atom on the tip of your finger, is you ate it, you drank it, or you breathed it in. Your body processed it. It worked its way out to the tip of your finger. You went like that, and it's gone. And all your atoms are completely changed. 98% of them every year. So of course, through your lifetime, many, many, many times, your atoms just completely are different atoms than they were. They say that, scientists say that when I take a breath and breathe out, there's so many atoms in that breath that I breathe atoms that Jesus breathed, and every other human being that ever existed. Let that all sink. Is your head ready to explode yet? So just go back to my notes. Okay, so while it's true that out of nothing, nothing comes, God is not nothing. So God is this ever-existing thing, because before the beginning there was nothing except God. Now, it's kind of, again, I don't want to say it's hard for us to get our head wrapped around it. It's completely impossible for us to get our head wrapped around it. The single most important doctrine in the Reformed faith is the incomprehensibility of God. Did anybody get to read that article that I posted? Yeah, Maurice Roberts. And it's very important. We'll quote just a section of it today, but I want to encourage everybody to read it if you have it. So he created everything out of nothing. There's the exact number of atoms. He constituted those atoms into trees and stars and the universe and the world and everything. So when a scientist goes back and uses a scientific method, and again, I'm a big advocate for this being taught in schools, because it's the only thing you could teach without there being God. But as long as it's taught, now I wish it was taught as a fact and not a theory. Because I don't like people teaching evolution because they teach it as a fact, not a theory, which it's only a theory. A theory is way above a fact. Facts change all the time. Facts are based on what you see at any given moment. When you have enough facts to come up with a theory, now you have the theory of gravity. That's pretty foundational. The theory of evolution, not quite as foundational. There's still scientists that disagree with it. But that's what they should be teaching in school, because we can only come to conclusions by what we observe. And as long as your children are understanding, well, this is how science comes to truth, they don't have the noeho, the understanding that comes from faith. So this is one of those things that what we're trying to think about is, what does it mean to be eternal? What does it mean that God exists? You can't even say existed. I used to have a teacher that would say, God was around for billions and billions and billions of years before we came into being. It's like, no, he wasn't. He's existed then as he does now. He always just exists in eternity. Now, you ready? I want you to close your eyes and just think about this, because we want to try to get what it means to have your head wrapped around the fact that God is incomprehensible. You gotta all close your eyes. I'll even close my eyes. You ready? I'm gonna say it. God cannot learn anything new. God cannot learn anything new. Okay, you can open your eyes. Can you get your head wrapped around that? Somehow he knows everything all at once, everything everywhere all at once. Is that the movie? Always, and always has. There's nothing that God, in his mind, that we could kind of comprehend using anthropomorphology, whatever that is, would give human attributes to God. Somehow, he knew before he created Adam and Eve exactly what he knows now. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's one of the things we're going to read about as we go through. So somebody's got to volunteer to read the section in the book when we get to it, all right? All right, so he created everything out of nothing. The atoms, when we're, that atom going off, my body getting older, us, doing our daily bowel movements, all of that is just this recycling of atoms. So the atoms move on to something else. So the atoms that were in your mom's ovary or ovum and your father's sperm, they've already moved on to something else. So this thing that we see as an aging process, it's just those atoms moving and going somewhere else. So now you start questioning the whole concept of time. Is there really such a thing as time? Is time going past us and it's there? The past is over there? Or are we going and the past is back there? Is there really only eternity where we are right now? And nothing's moving. We're not moving through time. Time's not moving past us. We're just getting older. Our atoms are moving on. The earth is turning. We created time. The hours of the day, they're not even accurate. You have to adjust them every 4 years. So basically we said, okay, we see what God did. We made the planets there for times and seasons. It even says that in the Bible. So we came up with, okay, well, let's break the day up into 24 hours. That's all man-made. God didn't make any of that. God's probably laughing at us. Oh, they think they're actually moving through time. How funny is that? They have movies about going back in time. So that's what it says. God sits in his kingdom as light. His ways are way beyond our ways. But that's, so again, I would draw a picture of, this is now, that could be the past or the future, that could be the past or the future, but what's really happening is, just keeps happening. This just keeps happening. Seconds go by. That second just went by. Oh, I wanted to do something, too late, that second went by. I used to, for fun, I would always do it whenever I was with a group on New Year's Eve. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And while everybody went, yay, I said, wait, I'm not ready yet. No, I'm not ready for the next. It kind of would throw people. Because what's really happening, Yeah, we are. We can't stop it. We're just moving. But we're not. It's just, so we can understand something of eternity when we realize, well, God is existing right here. When God opened up the heavens and said, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. It's no different. He could open that right now. It's the same God in the same proximity to us as he was to Adam. So again, if your head's not exploding yet, you got more to go. Okay, so when God created everything, created Adam, he could be fruitful and multiply. He was a full functioning human being. I love to share this because this kind of came to me in an inspiration as I was trying to conceive this. God had to have undigested food, or that was in the process of being digested, in Adam's stomach when he created him. This food would be things that he did not create previously, but took the form of food that was masticated by Adam, had the enzymes and all of the things working to break it down. Because when your baby's growing in you, all of that's happening, right? It's taking time. So that baby's going to be born with a full stomach until it starts drinking your breast milk And if you're gonna breastfeed, and and this is then it continues. So God can create a full-grown human being with everything that needed to be in place. And when we think about that and say, "Wow, that's massive," but think of how He created the whole universe in the same way. So you're talking about, God. When people say, "I believe in a higher power," bugs me. I don't know who's there. None of you are in my parish group, right? I don't think, yeah. But that came up. You were there? Were you there when she said, yeah, I know, kind of got a little tense there. And I even called to apologize to Sandy because I said, did you leave because of what I said? Let's talk about it and everything. She said, no, I locked my keys in my house. I had to get back because my landlord said, but yeah, when you say you believe in a higher power, God's not a higher power. He's a power completely removed from us in what He can know and do and everything. This is God, but at the same time connected to us because He condescends, so we could call Him Abba Father. It's mind-boggling. All right, so I hope by now your head is about to explode because it's too much to take in. But again, when we say, I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, this is what we're saying. So if you say that to a scientist and he says, oh, religious fanatic, that's not how it happened. Now, of course, I used to, in the 5 classes, we would get into the DNA molecule, which you're familiar with, right? So DNA molecule and how it's really impossible that it could have happened by chance because it's, again, not intelligent design. We never want to prove God from intelligent design. But there's questions that scientists have. They don't all agree. The difference with science and religion, particularly Christian religion, is that science is going to observe and come to conclusions. We're going to look through everything knowing that God created the heavens and the earth. So, of course, we come from a different place. All right. Who's got the first section? Read the first section of chapter 11 in the book, if you got it. I mean, chapter 2 in the book.
Whoa. We really have traveled.
I looked up at 11. Yeah, we're traveling for
I'll read it. All right. Chapter 2 of God and the Holy Trinity. There is but one only living and true God, who is infinite in being and perfection, a most pure spirit, invisible, without body, parts, or passions, immutable, immense, eternal, incomprehensible, almighty, most wise, most holy, most free, most absolute, working all things according to the counsel of His own immutable and most righteous will, for His own glory, most loving, gracious, merciful, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, the rewarder of them that diligently seek Him, and withal most just and terrible in His judgments, hating all sin, and who will by no means clear the guilty.
Okay, a lot of words in there, and this is the most references in any section of the Westminster Confession of Faith. This is why it took 5 weeks. We go through every one of those. Now, what's interesting, if you go through those verses, you can say, that doesn't really prove that. Again, remember, they wrote that, and then they were sent back in to find verses for every one of those words. They maybe found verses for 5 or 10 of the words together. And then, no, we want, have you found that in the Bible? Show me where. And they had to find a verse. Now, if you read some of the verses, you're really going to say, I don't see how that proves that. You have to have a class just on how they took those verses out of context and came to the conclusion that their explanation of God is there. So, of course, we're not going to cover all of them. We're going to start with immutable. What does immutable mean? Immutable. Anybody know?
To me, that was the most interesting one.
It is the most interesting because I'm surprised they haven't changed it because
Yeah.
a lot of this they kept in Old English,
Yeah.
just because, but it's immutable. We still use the word. Scientists would use it. Like the speed of light is immutable. It doesn't change, okay? Now again, they don't know that. Maybe it will change someday. Right now they're going by observation. So far it hasn't changed, so we're going to say it's immutable. But God cannot change, and that's why when you close your eyes and say, God can never learn anything new. Every time we learn something new, in time, there's a thought process, You're trying to work out a problem, come up with a plan. None of that happens with God. There is no planning. There is no, we talk about his holy decree, and we're going to go into that as we get into other chapters. And, what does it mean? I mean, is God changing his mind? It says that God changed his mind, that he was upset with mankind, so he destroyed the earth. But he doesn't change. He's immutable. So that's one of the characteristics that is completely unfathomable to us. That everything we know does change. Okay, the second word is incomprehensible, which is obviously what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to read this because I don't want to mess it up. Accepting that God is incomprehensible includes accepting that he cannot explain to us in a way that we can comprehend that he is incomprehensible to us. Again, let's check all those verses and see, how is it that God's incomprehensible? So he can't explain it to you. That's the point. Your brain is just too small. It's not, and people say, well, I look forward to when God's going to be able to explain that to me in heaven. No, in heaven, he's still God and we're still the creatures. And we still may not have the capacity. We may be able to see it more clearly. Now, the reference verse, there's only one reference verse for this, and if anybody could turn to Psalm 145:3. I have it written here, so you have it open already? Let's see who can get it. So it's Psalm 145, verse 3. Let's go ahead and... I should have prepared you. He's yeah.
I'm there. If you want. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable.
Right. Now again, hey guys, if this doesn't convince you God's incomprehensible in the Bible, that's what the Bible says. We're not going to go find 10 other verses for you, but there's plenty of other verses. I would have picked a different verse. I would have picked Isaiah 55:8, which we're going to read to here. Okay, now let's read section 2. Who wants to volunteer for that?
I got it. God hath all life, glory, goodness, blessedness in and of himself, and is alone in and unto himself all sufficient, not standing in need of any creatures which he hath made, not deriving any glory from them, but only manifesting his own glory in, by, unto, and upon them. He is the alone fountain of all being, of whom, through whom, and to whom are all things, and hath most sovereign dominion over them, to do by them, for them, or upon them, whatsoever himself pleaseth. In his sight all things are open and manifest. His knowledge is infinite, infallible, and independent upon the creature, so as nothing is to him contingent or uncertain. He is most holy in all his counsels, in all his works, and in all his commands. To him is due from angels and men, and every other creature, whatsoever worship, service, or obedience he is pleased to require of them.
Read the section that says contingent.
That's what I highlighted, sorry.
So as nothing is to him contingent or uncertain.
Okay. Not surprised. You should have highlighted that one. What does that mean?
I don't know, that's why I highlighted it.
Okay, so we're gonna focus on that. And he is alone the fountain of all being, of whom, through whom, to him, all things are, and hath most sovereign dominion over them, which is just another way of saying it. To do by them, for them, or upon them, whatsoever himself pleaseth. I wish they would at least say pleases, but they kept the old English. I guess it sounds better. Pleaseth. So what does it mean that's nothing contingent?
Nothing depends on something else.
Nothing depends on something else. That's exactly. So when we say nothing depends on something else, I just walked back. What did that depend on?
The floor.
Floor holding me up. I have faith that the floor is going to hold me up, that I can fall back, that there's nothing behind me. But what happened that resulted in me? What was the contingency that the next contingency, and the next contingency, and the next contingency, and the next contingency was that I would end up here? Everything is contingent on us. Everything. So when we say, again, your head's, I would tell the kids in the class, when you got to the point where your head felt like it was going to explode and you completely could not understand what I was saying, then I've done my duty and you're done. So there was this one cute little girl, Lori, she about 3/4 into the class, she raised her hand and says, "Mr. Macalusa, can I leave? I don't understand anything." So I said, you've accomplished what you need to accomplish. True story. And teaching these OPC kids, they knew the Westminster Confession of Faith and they knew the catechism, shorter catechism, by memory, the whole thing, not just the first, by the time they were 15, that's for sure. Okay, so again, let's listen to this. We got the contingency thing. So everything is contingent on something, which I'll explain in a second for us. But it says he is the alone fountain, source of, would mean all being, created all the atoms, of whom, through whom, and to him whom are all things. So there is nothing that he didn't create. And because of that, he has most sovereign dominion over them. Dominion, that's a pretty powerful word. They're trying to figure out what word should we have here. Dominion. He actually controls it. He even though he's not working in time, somehow this is controlled in eternity, which we can never understand. He has dominion over every atom, not just everything we do, but every atom. To do by them, in case you weren't clear what he meant, for them or upon them, whatsoever himself pleases. These statements are overwhelming, I would think. I know they're bothering you, Lindsay, because we've communicated about it. So what are you saying? That I am a puppet? That God pulls the strings? That I have no free will? That all decisions I make are put in my head by God so that he controls all my thoughts and actions? This is the excerpt from that article. And I want you to read the whole article because it's so important. The only way that we could possibly understand what we can understand from faith is if we not only accept but embrace the incomprehensibility of God. So this is the section I took out, but please read the whole thing. When Isaiah in the Spirit informs us concerning God's thoughts, that they are not our thoughts. That's Isaiah 55:8, so that's where we quoted it. He tells us what is true everywhere in the Bible. Every doctrine is included here. Creation, which we talked about. Providence, which we're going to get to in the next chapters. Election, retrobation, substitutionary atonement. Anybody know what substitutionary atonement is? That's the idea that Christ died for our sins, right? He was a substitute for us. Heaven and hell. At every point, God's wisdom is vastly brighter and better than ours. To have come to see that God's thoughts are far different from ours is to have taken a quantum leap forward in understanding the doctrines of the Christian faith. Those who get to this point, and sadly not all do, look at their Bibles with new eyes and with new adoration. You can kind of, it's okay to get to that point where I see God is telling me there's three gods in one God. There's no difference between the Holy Spirit, God the Father, and God the Son, yet they're different. Has anybody tried to explain that to you? The shell of an egg, the shell, the yolk, and the white that's together. It's one egg. No, that doesn't do it. Draw a picture. You have three triangles, and you can't. We can't possibly fathom what it means that God is three people. So if you're thinking of God, it's like there is no Holy Spirit in Christ. If you're thinking of a Christ, there is no Father, because each one of them is a 100% God, while all three are 100% God. The math does not add up, so it's completely beyond our reality. It says, they see that of themselves they know nothing aright, but are babes and fools in their own understanding. Okay, before I take up the rest of the class, any questions so far? We had 10 minutes. Take your time, think of it. Come on, Lindsay, I thought you'd have one thing to challenge.
I'm still stuck on contingent.
Contingent.
So nothing to him is contingent or uncertain. So, and it will probably always go back down to free will and predestination for me. I'm gonna die on that one.
It's a good cross to die on.
What?
A good sword to die on, yes. In case that wasn't picked up, we're talking predestination and election. Okay. Now, I knew you were going to ask that question. I set you up. So.
Well, I guess it's like nothing is, and I'm trying to think of another word for contingent. But it's weird to me that contingent and uncertain seem vastly different.
Yeah, contingent and uncertain. Yeah, the thing is, if the fact that we function in the world based on contingency, which we're going to get back on, means that nothing is uncertain. It's not necessarily going to be great,
Right.
but it's not
It's just
uncertain.
known.
Which would mean it's predetermined, and which means there's nothing we could do to avoid it. But does it mean that we don't have free will? See, this is the question. This is where, when we're gonna, your brain is gonna start hitting on the thing in your head, because you're gonna say, well, I can't accept that. And that's why there's so many disagreements about this doctrine. So the Arminians say, no, we have a free will. And the Calvinists say, no, you don't have a free will. What's great is the Associate Reformed Presbyterians, I hate that it's such a long sentence, we used to have a shorter name, say, yes, we do have a free will. We're completely free. And guess what? That's what the confession says. That's what the Bible says, because if the confession says it. Okay, go ahead.
So, I'm gonna try to say it to where it makes sense coming out of my mouth. I believe in predestination. I guess like that Isaiah verse is one of my favorites, cause it's like a fallback of like, well, it's above me, so it's fine. But if we have free will, we choose our decisions, but God created us for His glory and everything to please Him. I know sin comes and kind of messes that up, but I guess this was all written after sin. So how is it that free will and Him not really having any control or any, like He's just kind of watching us, I guess, when we do something sinful, how does that tie back to giving Him glory, because we're made to please Him?
It's true. God preordained and determined, I like to use the word determined, all things that will happen. Now remember, whenever we use an ED in talking about God, we're gone. There's no ED, there's no determined. You know, He's not determining something right now as we're doing it. We can't understand how He determines things in eternity. But remember, He's outside of time. There's nothing new. He knows the end from the beginning. Is He controlling us now to do certain things? Well, He can't, because He can't be controlling, because even ing starts falling short. We're trying to understand. So even in your question, there's you can see the different doctrinal stances that people felt they had to be pushed to. They had to say God is just watching from the outside, and that's what all our founding fathers, I love when these Christians say our founding fathers were such great Christians. They just, I did a survey when I taught this class first time at the OPC, and I said something about our founding fathers, and I said, is this true or false? George Washington was a Christian, true or false? So somebody said, so I said, well, why'd you say true or whatever? He said, well, he might have been a Christian. I said, well, that's absolutely true. 100%, because might leaves open the possibility for both. So you got to listen when science talks. Well, this might be true, evolution. Yeah, of course, it might be true, but it might not be true. So, but when somebody says, George Washington was a Christian, you can't really answer that unless you knew his heart and you met him in heaven. But, so we don't know if he was turned away at the gate because he believed in deism. But the point is, this is where your mind is going to take you to something that's rational. I don't have to write rational on the board, but that's the noeho. Noeho means the capacity God gave us to take information and come to a conclusion about it. Logic, reason, deduction, induction, all of those things that if you studied philosophy would do. But I'm going to destroy it. And happily, you're going to love this. Why'd you sit in that chair?
I'm a front row kid.
You're a front row kid? Okay, so you made it.
I like to be up front and hear and see and learn.
Okay, so this is a choice that you could actually
Yeah.
reflect back on your history and see why you didn't sit. It's only 2 rows you're in front. But why that would have put you a little closer to me. This chair was already taken. I should probably ask you, because you were the first one here, and you sat in that chair when you had all of these chairs to pick from.
Yeah, because it makes me uncomfortable when if I were to sit in the second row, it would feel like a disconnect from you.
Well, let me ask you this.
I don't like that.
Could you have sat in another chair?
Absolutely.
No, you couldn't.
Oh,
no.
That's contingency.
yeah.
No, I don't get that.
Well, I'm not going to leave it just at that. Come on. Let me prove it to you.
And be
Let's
It's contingent on who I am. It's contingent on my history.
I started out with,
Walking backwards.
why did I do that? Why did I do it that way? Why didn't I go this way? It's because I You sat in that chair because you
Wanted.
wanted to sit in that chair. Okay,
Yeah.
you sat in that chair because you wanted to sit in your chair. There's another way of saying it was your will to sit in that chair. So let's forget will for a second because it's just confused. You sat there because you wanted to.
Mhm.
The only way you could have had a free will, is your head hurting yet?
Is the desire to want.
Is, again, the desire one is just the same word. You
Right.
desire to sit in that chair. The only way you could really have a free will is if you wanted to sit in that chair, but you sat in that chair. You would have to do something against your will
Yeah.
to have a free will.
Mhm.
Do you see? You had no choice but to sit in that chair. I would tell the kids, I had liver and onions for dinner. Oh, I get all these faces, and you'd always have one weird kid. Oh, I love liver and onion. But usually, I try to come up with something weird, like, chicken livers or something like that, I know. So I said, oh, so are you free to eat liver? Yes. I said, but you may go through your whole life if you never eating liver. So it was God's will that you would never eat liver, but it was also your will, right? How is God controlling you in a way that you can say, oh, I see, God is actually controlling me because I am doing everything I want to do. But it's still determined. You take God out of the picture. Scientists are debating this all the time. How could we say that people do not have a free will? Because we know they don't. Scientists will tell you, philosophers will tell you, we do not have a free will. Everything is contingent on what we did this millisecond before, the millisecond before, the millisecond before. Contingency, contingency, contingency. Your choices are contingent on what you want at that time. And there's nothing you could fathom, that's the scientific community could fathom, that would make you do anything else. So everything you do is predetermined by what came this before. I know it's, yeah, you have a question.
Yeah, I have thoughts. So to me, like the way in my brain I'm a visual person. Like to me, it's the spark of God in us, That's the concept that this is to me. So for me, I personally processed a lot of this when I first opened my fabric shop because I have this really exciting, I get so excited when I make quilts and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever and everybody needs to know about it. And then I sit back and I'm like, why do I do that?
Yeah.
Why do I, and I believe that that's not of me. So that's just like a subset, but it's like, that spark is moving me towards something.
Yes. Well, again, we're not going to get into it because we got to cover another chapters, but this is also instrumental in the fact that you got saved at some point in your life. Did you really make that choice? God predetermined before the foundation of the world. Who's the last one to get married here? Do we know each other's? What, 2012?
2017?
2017?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, please. Okay. Did your, Taylor ask you to marry him?
He did, yeah.
Okay. Could you have said no?
I could have,
Okay. Was it predetermined before the foundation of the world that you would say yes?
yes.
Okay. So, is that why you said yes? Or did you say yes
I
because
said
you
yes
wanted?
because I wanted to.
Okay, again, you sat in that chair because you wanted, you said yes. So even though, here, let me get this, when you walk through that door and go out the building, are you free to go right or left?
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody here believe that God knows the day you're gonna die?
Yes, yes.
Okay, suppose you went right and a brick fell on your head and he didn't want you to die that day. You had control over when you would die, not him. If you go left, no brick. Go right, brick.
This is why I drank through my 20s.
Again, these are things that you have to accept. We're gonna get in, I think it's in chapter 3, but it might be in another chapter, but I'll bring it in because we're gonna have to combine some of these chapters. Yes, go ahead.
So thinking of people who go their whole life without believing, if God is in control of all of their movements because free will is not what they think it is, then how does that glorify
Well,
God?
that's an excellent question. These are one of the challenges that we come up with. That's why it says, when we get to that section, this is a doctrine that must be treated with very much care, and you don't necessarily discuss it with anyone. This is what we would say.
This is the cult. This is the
I challenge, let's see if we could do this. Okay, I'm gonna ask you all at the same time. I want you all answer at the same time, even especially based on what we, Can anyone be saved?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you all say yes? You were hesitant.
He didn't say anything.
Okay, well, when when we had the 3 kids at our parish group, Roman, Jack, and Callista, they're lined up, and they came over to me. I guess somehow I come to a conversation when they had the town hall meeting, and they said, "Oh, you're Sal, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Okay, yeah, I am. What's the difference between the PCA?" No, they didn't even say that. What's different about the ARP than other Reformed churches? They didn't mention any other Reformed churches. So I said, "Oh, very easy. Callista, Roman, Jack. Can anybody be saved? Yes. Can anybody be saved? Yes. Can anybody be saved?" You grew up in the PCA, didn't you? How did you know that? When I asked Pastor Soren, as I told you, at his induction into becoming a pastor at the synod, every elder gets to ask a question. I asked, "Can anybody be saved?" And he immediately said yes. I said, because somebody had asked about what's unique about the ARP, what's different about the ARP. And he kind of said some things about doctrinal stance and stuff. I said, that's all you have to say when somebody asks you what's different about the ARP. We believe anybody can be saved. God is not putting any limitation on anyone. Even those people who are preordained to not be saved, God does not do anything to make them be saved or not be saved. It's their own will, just as much as it is them sitting in that chair. Now, just so you say, when I taught this at the OPC, there were people like, I could see their heads were going to explode, and they actually wrote letters there were 6 elders and or pastors in there, which are both also elders, that got emails. They sent them saying, somebody's got to reteach that class because Macalusa did it wrong, blah, blah, blah. But that is what is taught in the Westminster Confession of Faith and in the Bible. You can't deny it. What must I do to be saved? Well, there's really nothing you can do. If you're saved, I do use the Jewish accent because they would do it right. Nothing can be done to be saved because the God already determined it. So just hang out, you'll find out if you're saved or not. No, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you'll be saved. And guess what? Your whole family too. As long as they see you as the head of the household, they're going to be saved too, because that's going to be the influence that's going to change their will. So when it says God changes their will, He doesn't change their will by going zzz. That's what some people in the OPC would say, or hyper-Calvinists. He changes your will by bringing you into circumstances that make you decide you want to say yes when Taylor asks you to marry him. Because, if there were different circumstances, contingency, you would not. And to God, there's no contingencies. It's all there all at once. You had it.
Well, I think you answered it, because what popped in my head was when Saul became Paul, it said God changed his heart. God, I don't know. I always imagine that of God zapping him.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe that's just when we all felt called ourselves.
Well, no, this is a very important question. Did God zap Paul? Did God zap anyone? When he says he changed his heart, when he says he changed his heart, again, you have to read it carefully and in the context and everything else. Why did he change his heart? Because he only changed his heart. So again, it was actually a pastor preaching, a missionary of all things, preaching from the pulpit at the OPC, who basically said, well, we really can't accept Christ until God has already changed our heart. And I went right after, I said, show me in the Bible where it says that. Now, that's what you think? He goes, oh, well, it really doesn't mean that, I said, show me. It's not there in the Bible. You don't get saved to get saved. You will only, there's 2 ways you can be saved, and we'll cover it as we go through the other classes. God can save anybody using the means, beyond the means, against the means. He can save autistic children. He can save, this is the only great thing about the Reformed faith that I hold up against the Baptists. And they say, well, there's a need of accountability. And for an autistic kid, it's his lifetime, So they're all going to heaven. Okay, I like that. They're all going to heaven. Maybe they are. I hope so. But the point is that the idea that God is not in control, and that we also not only have a free will because we know we have a free will, but the only reason we have a free will, the only reason that we can make choices is because God has preordained all things. It says that in the confession. It says it doesn't work against it. As a matter of fact, it's the reason why we have a free will. We only have a free will because this is how God created the heaven and the earth in eternity and oversees it. Again, you can't even say overseas because that's a past tense word. That's where you're going to fall short. Once you try to fit our wording into the doctrine, you're gonna fall short because the words are not there. Did you still have your hand up? No, anybody else have a question?
Well,
Yes.
it's just, so much of it is language based, which is, God is above that.
Yeah, or he has his own language that we would
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, and so even, I mean, that, to me, that helps me get through the process of thinking through this, is that it's, we try to, you know, pin down the words of different things, and God is beyond those,
Well,
and that's okay.
Read the quote on the notes from Calvin, what he said, because people accuse Calvin of hyper-Calvinism. Last thing he wasn't a hyper-Calvinist. He believes in the free offer of the gospel. Guess why? Not in social reform Presbyterian. We weren't around then. It's because that's what it says in the Bible. You know, so he wrote Calvin's Institutes long before the Westminster Confession of Faith was created. But there's a lot of comparison, a lot of things they disagreed with Calvin on. We were studying the Calvin's Institute. There was a Tuesday night meeting every week at my pastor's house. And at one point I said something. He said, "Oh, so you're a superlapsarian?" I said, "No, I've been called a lot of things in my time." You know, so that's what got me into studying this. And what does the Bible really say? Superlapsarianism is, you know, you want to know about it, but it basically it ties in with hyper-Calvinism, that God zaps you, and that's the only reason that you come to him. God didn't zap you to go into that chair. He didn't zap you to do anything that's going to be contingent as you're doing things that are your free will. So we believe, as much as the Arminian, as much as this building teaches, that man has a free will and God is outside that decision. We believe that as much as they do, but we also believe that the answer to the question, can anybody be saved? The full answer is yes. Anyone can truly, without any limitations by God, without any influence by God, without any coercion by God or constraint by God, anyone can be saved, but only the elect will be saved. And that's a set number that can't be increased or decreased by one. So that's in one of the chapters.
Yes.
So when we get to that, yes.
Cliffhanger.
All right, so
Cliffhanger.
we're gonna have to rush out. Thank you all for your
Thank you,
attentiveness.
Sal.
I hope I pressed video here. Did I? Yes, I did.
Okay, good.